Hi, we're out on our range today, and once again we're doing an ammunition comparison. Now before you send me any hate mail telling me about how ammunition comparisons are boring and they're not entertaining, hold on just a second. Okay, are you entertained? Remember, ammunition comparisons are not intended to be entertaining. They're intended to put out useful information. Also, today we're going to do some multitasking. We're not only doing an ammunition comparison, but today will be part one in a multi-part series on a question that I've been asked recently. There's been some events in the news recently that have prompted this question from many people. And it's different versions of, if you, as an honest, law-abiding citizen, are confronted by a homicidal criminal who's trying to kill you or kill other innocent citizens, and that particular criminal happens to be equipped with body armor, what do you do? Well, today, not only will we test some ammunition, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And the first thing I'd say about that is that a while ago we did a presentation on some 38 special and some 9x19 ammunition that was TUI ammo, tumble upon impact. First thing I tell you is watch that presentation. We'll post a link in the description. And in case I screw that up, if you'd like to post a link in the comments, that'd be great. Okay. Now the ammunition we're going to test is this G9 9x19 ammunition. Recently I was at Garner's in Pendleton, Oregon. They pointed this out to me, asked me to give it a test, so here we are. Now what we have here is two different types of 9x19 plus P. Now this is Woodsman ammo. It's 9mm plus P Woodsman 124 grain solid copper with an advertised velocity of 1200 feet per second. Now recently we did a presentation on some different types of 9x19 124 grain projectiles. They all had velocities less than 1100, so 1200 would be impressive if it really delivers that performance. Now the other type I have is 9x19 plus P external hollow point, which is an 80 grain solid copper projectile with an advertised velocity of 1400 feet per second. Now remember, it's only an 80 grain projectile, but 1400 feet per second will be impressive if it'll really deliver that performance. Now one of the questions that comes up immediately is, what does G9 stand for? As near as I can tell, it stands for, gee, this stuff is expensive. I don't usually like to talk about price because it can vary so much from one jurisdiction to the next, and these days it can vary so much from 1 week to the next. But I'm going to talk about price of these ammunitions. Now remember, both of these are just 20 round boxes. And for the Woodsman ammunition, I paid $42. Now the external hollow point, it must be better because it was $44. So it's definitely very expensive ammo that's making some really impressive claims. So today we'll see how it performs. And we'll start with a close-up of what these ammunitions look like. On your left is the Woodsman ammunition with its 124 grain solid copper projectile, and you can see that it's a slightly tapered flat nose with a very sharp pointy nipple on the end of it. And on your right is the external hollow point. I don't see any hollow point, but it looks a lot like an Extreme Defender or an Extreme Penetrator projectile. So now that we see what they look like, let's see how they perform. And we'll start with an accuracy evaluation. I shot this target from a distance of 20 yards, and this is our group. These two really are just me. However, this was me shooting offhand from 20 yards with my Sig Sauer M17, which is loaded with Winchester White Box 9x19 115 grain full metal jacket round nose. We need a basis of comparison. So now that we have that, I'll go back 20 yards with my SIG M17, shoot at the target on your right, offhand with our G9 ammunition, and I'll start with our external hollow point, the 80 grain solid copper projectile. Let's see what kind of group I can get with that. And we have a very good group. However, our point of impact has shifted quite a bit. Now I have a new target set up, and I'll go back 20 yards and shoot the target on your right with the G9 124 grain projectile. Let's see what kind of group I can get. And our shots in no particular order are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can cover all of those with one hand, but that is not a particularly good group. Let's try that again. And there's our group, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's not bad, but not as good as we got with the other ammunitions. When shooting an auto-loading pistol, I typically do not run the pistol completely empty. Sometimes in testing new ammunitions, I will. And it's interesting to note that with 124 grain ammunition, I shot the pistol until it was empty, and like most auto-loading pistols, the slide will lock back after the last shot. But with the 124 grain ammunition, it didn't. Now let's see what kind of velocities I can get with this ammunition. I have the chronograph set up at 7 yards, and I have the SIG Sauer M17 loaded with the G9 124 grain projectiles. $1,024. $1,115. $1,106. $1,105. $1,098. And $1,112. Now let's try our 80 grain projectiles. Now I'm loaded with the G9 80 grain projectiles, but I have to point out, just a moment ago when I was loaded with 124, I did in fact fire the pistol until it was empty, and it failed to lock the slide back. So we'll see if the 80 grain projectiles can do that. $1,395. $1,372. $1,417. $1,458. $1,408. 1401. And no, this ammunition didn't lock the slide back either. Now let's go crunch the numbers. Well, I crunched the numbers, but before we get to that, we have to discuss the slide failing to lock back. I ran the M17 empty 3 times with our G9 ammunition, and the slide failed to lock back 3 times. But before we just blame that on the ammunition, we have to consider, is the firearm or the magazine defective? Now, I was using the same magazine the entire time. So what I did was, off camera, loaded the M17 with 3 rounds of our Winchester white box ammunition and did this. And you can see the slide failed to lock back. I repeated that several times, and the slide did lock back most of the time, but not every time. So we can't blame it on the ammunition. I also did this with other magazines, and the slide did lock back, so it would appear the weak link here is the magazine. Okay, with that, let's get to our numbers. And yes, I wear earplugs with every shot I take. I crunched the numbers on our G9 ammunition. And of course it comes with the normal caveats that chronographs don't always agree with each other, and certain environmental factors like ambient temperature and elevation can affect chronograph results. But the results I got were, with the 124 grain projectile, a mean velocity of 1,093. But remember, it was rated at a velocity of 1,200. Again, chronographs don't always agree with each other. They may have used a different firearm in their testing process, and sometimes manufacturers advertise velocities are optimistic. But to put 1,093, close to 1,100, in perspective, remember recently we did a presentation where we compared several different types of 9x19 124 grain full metal jacket round nose target ammunition, and they all got 1,000 and change. So comparing this ammunition to those, 1,093 is pretty good velocity. Nothing stellar, but pretty good. However, we have to put that in the perspective of what's printed on this box. Now, this box reads, Ideal Wilderness Protection. This box also reads, Ballistically Better. And let's not forget that it also reads 9mm plus P. And last, but certainly not least, is this stamp right here that reads $42. When you take all of those things into consideration, 1,093 is not impressive at all. But with our G9 ammunition with the 80 grain solid copper external hollow point projectile, it was rated at a velocity of 1,400. I got a mean velocity of 1,408, so it does live up to the hype. And even though it is an 80 grain projectile, so we'd expect higher velocities than what you'd typically see in more typical weights like 115 or 124, 1,408 is still impressive. But as I've said so many times, those are just numbers on a page. How will that translate into effectiveness on the intended target? Especially when the intended target is a homicidal criminal wearing body armor. Let's put that to the test. Here's our meat target, and for those who haven't seen it before, the meat target is leather couch skin, followed by pork steak pectorals, pork ribs, a bag of oranges to simulate lung tissue, more pork ribs on the back, and today our meat target is wearing body armor. Now this Safariland body armor does not have a rating printed on it like 2A or 3A, but it is very clearly labeled that it will stop 9x19, 124 grain, full metal jacket round nose at a velocity of 1,400 feet per second. Our G9 ammunition is 9x19 with a 124 grain projectile at a velocity of less than 1,100, so this should stop it. But remember, the G9 ammunition is not just 124 grain, but it's all copper, flat nose with a pointy little nipple. So I'll shoot this target with the SIG M17 from a distance of 7 yards, and we'll see how our G9 124 grain fares against the body armor. And our results? Kind of a mixed bag. I fired 3 shots, one of which was stopped by the body armor. The other 2 not only went through the body armor, but they went completely through the target, both of them being stopped by the first layer of the new and improved high-tech fleece bullet stop. But as far as the damage done to the target, the ribs on the front of the target just have 9mm holes in them. The ribs on the back of the target just have 9mm holes in them. What was slightly impressive is the damage that was done to the orange lung tissue, and this is impressive considering that this is a non-expanding round that showed no evidence at all that it tumbled. So kind of a mixed bag. But let's take a close-up look at the two projectiles that went all the way through the target. And here's our two projectiles, and even after going through the body armor, I don't see any deformation at all. So the results we got with the G9 ammunition looked impressive, but now we have to prove that. We've got the same Safariland body armor on a meat target, and I'll shoot this from 7 yards with the M17, but now the pistol's loaded with MagTech 9x19 124 grain full metal jacket round nose, which is producing a velocity a little less than 1100 feet per second. So if our body armor can stop this ammunition, we know that the G9 was special. If this goes through the body armor, then the G9 isn't special, just the body armor is defective. So let's see what kind of results I can get with this. So with the MagTech ammunition, I fired 6 shots. 6 hit the body armor, 0 went through it. That tells us a lot about our G9 ammunition and about our body armor. Now we have a new meat target set up and we have new body armor. Like our previous body armor, this doesn't have a 2A or 3A rating stamped on it, but its label is very clearly marked that it is rated to stop 9x19 submachine guns or lesser threats. Now a submachine gun is going to typically have a longer barrel than your pistol, so greater velocity. And submachine guns are typically loaded with 9x19 submachine gun ammunition, which is loaded quite a bit hotter than regular 9x19. So it should stop our 9x19 out of a pistol easily. So I'll shoot this from 7 yards with the SIG M17, which is now loaded with the G9 external hollow point ammunition, an 80 grain all copper projectile. And let's see how this fares. I have our target taken apart. Now I shot 4 shots, all 4 went through the body armor, completely through the target, and all 4 were stopped by the first layer of fleece. So that's impressive, but the damage they did, not so much. Our ribs on the front of the target just have 9mm holes in them. Where projectiles hit ribs, broke them. Our damage to our orange lung tissue is mediocre, not that impressive for something that comes out of a box marked hollow point. But penetrating the body armor, that was impressive. Now, let's take a look at these projectiles. And here's our projectiles, and we can see that to varying degrees the tips are blunted, but not really all that much deformation. Now we have a new meat target with a different piece of the same type of body armor, and I'll shoot this from 7 yards with our MagTech ammunition. So again, we'll prove, was our G9 ammunition really good, or our body armor just really bad? I fired 6 shots, all 6 were stopped by the body armor. But even though the body armor stopped the bullets, let's take a close-up look at the meat target. Here's the front of our meat target. Here's our leather couch skin. And even though the body armor stopped the projectiles, we can see that it tore our leather couch skin, and that tear goes all the way through the pork chop pectoral underneath, even though the bullet was stopped. And here's one of the bullets I recovered, and you can see how much it's mushroomed out. So even though the vest stopped the bullet, you'd still be hurting pretty bad. Now I have a meat target set up with a new piece of the same type of body armor that's rated to stop 9x19 submachine guns. But in this case, I've folded the body armor in half. For a projectile to go through this, it'll have to go through 2 layers of it. So now I have my M17 loaded again with the G9 ammunition with its 80 grain external hollow point projectile, and we'll see if I can shoot through 2 layers of this from 7 yards. Well, I disassembled our meat target and our body armor. I fired 5 shots, and of those 5, 1 went through both layers of body armor completely through the meat target, stopped by the first layer of fleece. But the other 4 were all stopped by the body armor. So it would appear that our 80 grain external hollow point projectile is good, but not magical. So the takeaways from all of this. Well, in our accuracy evaluation, we saw that with our GS9 external hollow point ammunition, we got a really good group, but in a different place than the group we got with the full metal jacket ammunition. And with our GS9 flat nose pointy nipple ammunition, we didn't get such a good group, but it was still in a different place than with our full metal jacket ammunition. And anytime you switch ammunitions, you got to be prepared for a shift in group location and a possible shift in group size. Now, as far as the power of the ammunition, I gotta say, the flat nose pointy nipple ammunition, a little disappointing. The external hollow point ammunition, impressive. The effect on the meat target was impressive in one sense, but not so much in another. Both ammunitions seem to have at least some ability to go through body armor, the external hollow point ammunition more so, but neither did all that much damage after they had gone through. Now, I'm going to say that even though we saw that when the body armor stopped the bullet, it seemed to do a lot of damage, I'm going to go with having gone through the body armor is going to be more effective, causing more damage. So are either of these ammunitions the right ammunition for you? You be the judge. Are they the right ammunition for me? I'm going to say no, unless I expect to be somewhere acting in my role as law-abiding citizen when I have to deal with a homicidal criminal who's trying to murder me or other innocent citizens, and that criminal happens to be wearing body armor, then all of a sudden this GS9 external hollow point ammunition might very well be the right ammunition for me. And in answering the question, what should you do if you're in that situation, one of the possible solutions might be breaking open your piggy bank, sucking it up, and just spending the money on an ammunition like the GS9 external hollow point ammo. So, as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the GS9 9mm ammunition video.